Thank you. So, Deputy Dara has raised the need for extra resources to be given to the State Laboratory in order to expedite their investigations into alleged petrol stretching incidents. Deputy Calleary has 4 minutes to make an initial statement.
Thank you, Alaskan Curler. I want to thank the Curler for allowing me to raise this issue again. Minister, you're familiar. I know you dealt with this issue before, and really, we're whatever 2 months on now. We're really no further on in terms of people's understanding of solutions to this issue. And since it was raised, and since we raised the issue previously, the problem has extended. And Deputy Denis Naughten, Deputy Michael Fitzmaurice spoke to me today when they heard this was coming up. And I also had a call from Councillor Eugene Murphy in Roscommon during the day, who's chairing a group in Roscommon on this issue. It now extends Mayo into Roscommon to parts of Westmeath, and I understand from Deputy Brendan Smith parts of County Cavan. And for those that don't know, what we're talking about here is people around about last June and through into July bought petrol from legitimate petrol retailers, bought so on the assumption of good faith, and since then serious problems have arisen with their cars. In many cases the engine has been destroyed, the car has been rendered unusable. These are people who don't have money to buy new cars, who don't have money to make the kind of repairs that are necessary, people who have spent all their lives in a law-abiding way. And many of the retailers are reputable as well. And since then, it has to be acknowledged that for those with comprehensive insurance, their insurance companies have dealt with them. However, people have lost the no-claims bonus. And in many cases, that no-claims bonus has been built up over decades. Secondly, for those with third-party insurance, there is no cover. They have been left completely out of pocket, and there is no compensation for them. So really, Minister, what I want to know is, we understand that there's a minimum of 160 complaints in the Mayo Garda division alone. That figure may have increased, but the amount of complaints made to revenue is substantially less. And a revenue official made a commitment at a public meeting that they would engage in public clinics in County Mayo, and I presume same in County Roscommon. Deputy Naughten has joined us, to allow for investigations there. The point was made on the night that the big problem is trying to get the source of this, and the delays in the National Laboratory are adding to this because of the lack of resources and because they are dealing with other issues. But if you don't have a car, if your car is off the road, if you cannot go to work, or if you're paying a taxi to go to work, if you've been faced with a bill of some thousands of euro to repair your car, if your car has been rendered useless, this is your biggest problem. I put it to you, Minister, that if I went out in the morning and had green diesel in my car, that I was picked up by customs, that they will be back to me and they will have prosecution against me. They will be able to find the source straight away. And we cannot understand, Minister, how in a situation where there is traceability from the retailer where you get your petrol back to the wholesaler, and customs are supposed to have absolute traceability, where in all of the cases that have been referred to the Gardaí, specific retailers have been mentioned, how customs and how the Gardaí have not been able to use that traceability to find who caused this. Because nobody has been made responsible for this, while hundreds of people have been desperately inconvenienced. So really, Minister, the issue about the National Laboratory, where are we at now, some 2 months after you first engaged with this, in fairness to you? Is there any sense of a prosecution pending? And finally, for those in third-party insurance, people pay a lot of tax when it comes to buying petrol, and people have paid a lot of tax over the years. Is there some sort of issue of a compensation fund that may come out of the amount of tax that is being paid, or in the case of the Motor Insurance Bureau of Ireland, could that be used, that model be used, to fund people who are out of pocket through no fault of their own? It's not as if they went out and deliberately destroyed their cars through no fault of their own, through using suppliers whom they've used in many cases for years. They find themselves in a situation. People are incredibly frustrated, they are angry, and they feel completely let down by the various organs of the state, be they in Mayo, be they in Deputy Knox's constituency in Roscommon, be they in Westmeath, Cavan, or anywhere, Minister.
Come on, the Minister now has 4 minutes to reply.
Thank you very much, Alaskan Curler. I want to begin by thanking Deputy Calleary for raising this matter, and I'm sure he won't mind me acknowledging, as he already has done, Deputy Naughten's interest, who I know joins us in this House as well and has raised it previously, most recently on a piece of legislation here in this House. I want to I suppose, echo the sentiment expressed by Deputy Calleary in terms of the sheer frustration that I know is being felt by people who, as you quite correctly say, through no fault of their own, have seen serious damage done to cars written off road, and really a devastating impact on their lives and their family lives as they go about trying to do their daily business. All forms of fuel fraud obviously impose risks to consumers' vehicles, legitimate business and the Exchequer. Accordingly, both the Revenue Commissioners and the State Laboratories are directing the resources to tackle this issue. Revenue has, over the recent past, received reports from a variety of locations around the country of problems relating to petrol quality and suggestions that these problems are attributable to petrol stretching. Revenue investigates all complaints of this kind, and fuel samples are taken from filling stations and referred to the State Laboratory for analysis, where the investigating officers have reason to suspect excise fraud. The State Laboratory makes use of an array of tests to determine whether an adulteration of the petrol has occurred. A total of 79 samples, as the Deputy correctly said, of petrol from filling stations in the Border, Midlands and Western region have been referred for analysis to the State Laboratory following checks conducted from June 2014 to date. Conclusive results have been received in one case which confirms contamination through the presence of kerosene, and a file is being prepared for prosecution in this case. A second positive contamination result is currently under investigation, and I expect that to continue to progress. To date, no evidence of fraudulently contaminated petrol has been found in the remaining samples. I understand that in addition to analysing samples referred to it, the State Laboratory is providing technical and scientific support for the ongoing investigations. The analysis of potentially stretched petrol is a complex one, and to date has involved a significant level of time-consuming and non-routine testing, and this requires further investigation. It's quite appropriate that level of time be attached to such an important matter. The volume of samples which are sent for analysis has necessitated a reallocation of resources within the State Laboratories to prioritise this matter. As with many other civil service departments and offices, both the Revenue Commissioners and the State Laboratory are subject to the Employment Control Framework, and I don't need to tell any Deputy in the House the impact of that on staffing levels over the past 5 years. However, I am informed and happy to inform the House that the laboratory has prioritised the testing of all samples submitted in connection with the petrol stretching issue, and all staff who have the necessary expertise and experience in this area are currently being deployed to work on these samples, and I do welcome that prioritisation. Petrol stretching is an offence under Section 102(1)(a) of the Finance Act 1999 and carries a penalty on summary conviction of €5,000 or, at the discretion of the court, to imprisonment for a term not exceeding 12 months or both. If it's an indictable offence, the fine is a maximum of €126,970 and the prison term is a maximum of 5 years, or indeed both. The Deputy can be assured that if Revenue's investigations and the analysis of fuel samples by the State Laboratory indicate the presence of illegal stretching agents in petrol, Revenue will take action and pursue prosecutions against offenders where possible. As part of Revenue's normal operating procedures, full delivery tankers are challenged when encountered by enforcement officers throughout the Border, Midlands and Western region. No case of contaminated petrol has been identified by them as a result of these checks since June 2014 to the current day. Motorists, of course, and indeed all people, should report any suspicions to Revenue, and the Revenue Commissioners have recently launched a dedicated section of its website specifically dealing with the shadow economy, and this includes a reporting facility for anyone who has information about the shadow economy practices, including the adulteration of fuel, and I would encourage everybody to make use and indeed to promote that. I think Deputy Naughten has made the point about that, and that's something that I will ensure is rectified, that it's made more prominent on the website. I'll certainly ask Revenue to do that. As I said at the beginning, this matter is being treated as a priority by Revenue and by the State Laboratory, and I would assure the Deputy that both agencies are currently doing everything that they can do, including the reallocation of resources where necessary to tackle this serious issue.
Deputy Dara Calleary for
Thank you, Speaker. I thank the Minister for his response. Just a couple of things. I appreciate the reallocation of resources. However, to a certain extent, the difficulty here is the horses bolted. This happened in May and June, and you say that fuel delivery tankers are challenged when encountered. How many times has that happened? Is there a plan in place, or is it just when enforcement officers are driving around, they come on a tanker? How many encounters have we had throughout the summer? And secondly, I asked in my remarks, in relation to specific retailers have been named to the Gardaí and to Customs, has the traceability from the retailer back to the wholesaler being initiated, and has an analysis of that traceability being initiated in order to go back to the source? Because if these retailers are keeping with the law, they have to have detailed records of where they buy their fuel. And thirdly, Minister, just the area of compensation for those with third-party insurance who are without anything, who have no cover, through no fault of their own. It's not as if they went out and caused an accident. For those with fully comprehensive, who are paying the price now and will pay the price in a much increased premium next year for having had to make a claim, again, through no fault of their own. And, Minister, I cannot bring home to you the level of frustration the level of anger that is being felt by people who feel that the system has completely let them down on this. They have been involved in this through no fault of their own, and we emphasise that over and over again. All they did was go and buy a tank of fuel, like we all do every day. And they went to the same retailer they have always gone to, like we all do every day. And they're being put through the mill. I'll give you one example of a 78-year-old lady who had her car for absolute use, shopping, socialising, going to mass. Her daughters had to move home, back home from England, to try and do that for her using a rented car because they're not in position to make the repairs that are necessary or to repair the car. And that is typical of hundreds of people who have been placed in this situation. Minister, I ask you to give this absolute priority and to actually ensure that the pressure comes from you on the Minister for Justice, that somebody is held to account for this and those who are suffering are compensated.
Thank you, Minister, to conclude.
Thank you very much, Laskin Curl. I want to thank Deputy Calleary again for raising this matter, and believe me, the seriousness of this is not lost on me. I don't think it's lost on any member of this House. And I did acknowledge the devastation that I know this has caused for people who you quite rightly say are going about their business and haven't done it through no fault of their own, have found themselves in this situation. You've asked a couple of very specific questions in relation to how many times have we had such encounters and the likes, and I'm going to revert to you on that. I'm going to ask for the details to be provided, and also in relation to the traceability and that the issue of the compensation be explored. And I'll revert to you on those three matters. As I have said at the outset, the State Laboratory has prioritised the testing of all samples submitted in connection with the petrol stretching problem. I think that is an important statement of intent from our state agencies, that we really want to get to the bottom of this, and if it's possible at all to pursue a prosecution, let's get that done. I think that is important. I'm also going to ensure that a copy of this debate is sent to my colleague, the Minister for Justice, and I'll pursue this with her, as I'm sure colleagues on all sides of the House also will. Obviously, this is an issue which clearly there is a finance element, an important finance element in relation to the revenue commissioners, but obviously it goes across a number of areas, including the Department of Justice. In relation to insurance companies, obviously the first point of contact for motorists whose vehicles have been affected should of course be their motor insurance companies. I understand from Insurance Ireland that each insurer investigates individual cases in relation to damage done to car engines because of petrol stretching. It is a matter of whether this financial loss is included or excluded under the terms and conditions of the individual contract, and I take the point that Deputy Calleary makes in relation to third party. I understand that some insurers are paying out on these claims. It should be noted, I think it's important to put on the record of the House for people watching this debate, that anybody who has an unresolved insurance complaint can refer the matter to the Financial Services Ombudsman for investigation and adjudication. Persons affected should also contact the point of purchase of the fuel, and if they remain unsatisfied, they have a recourse to civil remedies and should seek legal advice. But look, I think put simply, we all need to up our game on this. We need all the agencies of the state.
Succeed with a criminal conviction, that it can be made available for a civil case.
Again, I'll raise that matter with the Revenue Commissioners. It sounds pretty pragmatic to me. But certainly, I'll certainly revert to Deputy Calleary and indeed Deputy Naughten on those matters, and we'll continue to pursue this in every way we can.
Thank you, Minister. That concludes topical issues for today, and we'll